these agreement on prime ministerial visits make, and the fact that there has been a chemistry between our two prime ministers today, and one man's effort as the Prime Minister of India to go to Japan as the first country outside SAARC to visit, unlike some of our previous prime ministers which thought about generally going to Western countries or Russia as their first visits, is indicative of the fact that in the entire context of East Asia, he is talking not just, the Prime Minister of India, not in terms of look east, but act east, as somebody mentioned this morning. The relationship between Japan and India may or has been seen generally by Indians in terms of how much money Japan gives us and how much we utilize that money for our own growth. I think we need to see that relationship in a much larger context as put forward by the ambassador. India, Japan, China are considered by the rest of the world as the three major pillars of the Asian region, of the Asian security, of East Asia and South Asia. And it is only natural that these three countries need to get together in terms of making many of the problems in the world, both economic, political, security, terrorism, global change, etc., a reality for better terms or times for the generations like you. And this is where I think one needs to look at Prime Minister Modi's visit there, the return visit that Mr. Abe was here on the 26th of January, and these exchanges will continue. The point I'm trying to make here is that today the look east or the act east policy is only a fulfillment of what has long been a policy issue with the Ministry of External Affairs and the government. It is only in recent times that both the government and largely the private sector, the NGOs and the social sector, has begun to realize that that the India-Japan relationship is a necessary, or growth in India-Japan relationship is necessary for the sake, not only for our economic, trade and investment relations, but also from the point of view of the security and stability of the Asian subcontinent. Even more, this relationship has a great impact on the countries in between India and Japan, and much of it is a part of ASEAN. ASEAN today has, as Secretary East mentioned this morning, a whole lot of relationship with India. India has become part of the APEC, part of the Asian Plus countries group. There may be a little delay in our establishing this relationship with ASEAN, just as we have delayed establishing relationship with Japan. And I can't help telling you that when I was ambassador High Commissioner in Kuala Lumpur in 1981, there was a special effort made by the then 6 ASEAN countries, led by Malaysia, to invite India for talks and to sort out the issue, in other words, to give special recognition to India. Unfortunately, at that time, we had a change in government, and obviously the new government's policies in the 80s were not to move forward in that direction. As a result, our signing of the agreement with ASEAN was delayed till 1996, and we may have missed a few years. But what I genuinely believe is that whether it is ASEAN, whether it is Japan, we need not really look backwards. We really need to look forwards, and this is something which the present government is very keen to do. What I have also noticed both in Pune and in Mumbai, where I spend a lot of time, and of course the rest of India, is that there is a huge interest in private sector to be able to work out trade and investment relationships with Japan, that efforts are being made in order to invite the Japanese companies to invest in India, to work in India with the Indians. And as we have heard from the representative of JETRO, doing business with India atmosphere is still something which troubles the Japanese companies, and that there is scope for improvement in it, not only because of criticism from Japan, but also from criticism of a lot of Western countries in response to the Prime Minister's appeal for more and more FDI. We need to take these suggestions or criticisms as suggestions from friends and do something on our own to improve whatever areas they find us deficient in terms of giving FDIs. But one of the things that I would like to mention here is that I hope that the Japanese companies are also given to understand that while there are large number of advantages in investing in India, those difficulties that they mention should be tested against the huge number of advantages that you have. And in a considering that we are a democracy as compared to many other countries in which the Japanese go, they need to adjust their involvement with India on the basis of the overall political and economic and cultural situation that they find in here. In other words, there is need for both. For example, when I was in Japan, I don't know if it is still true or not, the Japanese always told me, we'll come to India if you give us 100% ownership. At that time, our rules were a 76-24 maximum foreign, 74-26 maximum foreign participation. We did make an effort to attract some of the Japanese to come. I remember how Sony was given a special preference to give 100% ownership, and they did come to India at the time when I was ambassador there. But my point simply is that I used to keep telling them that if you really have difficulties after establishing yourself here in terms of some of the local issues like water, power, labor, etc., would it not be wiser for you to have 10 or 20% local joint venture partnership in order to enable some of those problems to be solved by the local companies, where they have a much greater knowledge of how to function in state governments or in areas where this is established. In other words, 100% ownership may be a culture of the Japanese abroad and probably successful in some of the Asian countries. There is a need for both sides to be able to look at each other's benefits rather than each other's difficulties in order to be able to come up with solutions that would enable not only the Japan-India relationships to grow, but also benefit the entire Asian subcontinent, particularly the Asian countries in which both Japan in a big way is present and where India's relations are growing. Japan and India are natural partners. We have a policy right from Jawaharlal Nehru to consider it as an important country to be given importance. There is also the fact that I was ambassador there and have a lot of contacts with them. So I may have a natural preference for Japan when it comes to India's relationship with Japan. Japan may have certain difficulties with another of our big neighbor, China, just as we have with our big neighbor in Pakistan. But these are issues that I am sure, politically and otherwise, the two countries will be able to work out, if not resolve. And the great benefit with the Japanese is that even if you look at any of the major issues that we are facing, whether it is border problems, whether it is entry of India into the United Nations, or whether it is overall question of looking at world issues, etc. Japan and India have much less in terms of conflict than any other two countries in this area. And by putting that last thought there, may I also point out to the excellent presentation given to us on connectivity, because as we have been saying right from the beginning in the morning, almost everyone has said it, including our chief guest, Mr. Gadkari, that connectivity is one of the most important things in terms of raising this relationship. We talk about trade, we talk about investment, but as our experience goes, connectivity by itself increases both trade and investment, and that connectivity has to come both in air services. I mean, it is pathetic that today we have no direct flights to Myanmar, for instance, from either Delhi or Mumbai, or we have some of the areas pointed out, Indonesia, no direct flights to Indonesia, which is the country after India, the fourth largest country after Japan, China, and India. So these are very important presentations that have been made. It is my hope that both the government of India, the ASEAN government, and the Japanese government will pay a lot more attention to the connectivity issues. I have a lot of faith in the recent exchanges between India and Japan, particularly during and after the visit of our Prime Minister there, to hope that the ACT East Asia policy, including Japan, is something that is going to be not just talk, but also a reality. With these words, I thank you very much for the invitation given to me. I don't want to take over the subject from the chairperson, but perhaps if you have any questions, I'm quite sure the panel members would be happy to take them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Shah, for putting this session and summarizing the results of the session. It's been my privilege to have chaired this very long session on trade and investment, which give ballast to India's involvement in what is being termed as the Asian century. What we do in trade and investments and economic relations with Asia and Asian countries will determine our position in the future in this growing and important continent. We are all participants in this process, and in this industrial and economic heartland of India, Western India, I hope that the students who are here and the other practitioners and the business people who are here will take heart and participate in this national effort to create and subserve Indian interests by taking Indian economic and trade investment interests forward. We are in an exciting phase at this juncture when Asian countries, including India, have all developed niche capabilities and products which we can exchange and thereby expand trade and our own economic potential. With that, I thank Symbiosis University for giving us and this panel opportunity to talk to all of you about this. Before ending, let me once again thank Mr. Yadavendra Mathur, Dr. Ajit Ranade, Ambassador V.S. Seshadri, Mr. K.N. Radhakrishnan in the first session before lunch, and in this session, Ambassador Deepa Gopalan Vadva, Mr. Katuso Matsumoto, Mr. Ichiro Abe, and Ambassador Prakash Shah for their very wise words to all of us this morning and this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Singh. May I call upon Dr. Vidya to felicitate the speakers?
So before I felicitate all the dignitaries on the dais, I'd just like to take a minute because I'm so happy that we could have a special session in Japan, which was really something that I wanted to do, but because of all the lengthy sessions, it wasn't possible for Shivali and Ambassador Devre to arrange it. But nevertheless, I think we should thank Minister Gadkari because he preponed his coming to Symbiosis, and therefore we could have this session. As a university, we really want to set up a Japan Area Study Center. We are already working towards it. We have a large number of students from Japan coming in. Every year, about 35 students come to Symbiosis to study for a year. And some of our students also go, but not in large numbers because of the language problem. We have a school of foreign languages where over 100 students, in a year, 100 students study Japanese as a language. And of course, we also teach at some of our business schools. It's not a very popular language, but we're trying to push. And we hope that some of our MBA students and the undergrad students get opportunities to do internships in some of your companies in Japan. So I'm so happy that there's a nice panel here, and we hope we can take this forward by establishing a Japan Area Study Center. Thank you.
We have a short tea break and we come back at 4 o'clock.